I've been playing Pokemon Draft League for 10 years and have tried almost every idea you could think of. Well, except for one team. People have been telling me for years that this idea would never work in Pokemon Draft League, that it was a bad idea and I should just stick with the standard and proven cores. So I decided to play in one of Pokemon's biggest Generation 6 tournaments with the goal of proving everyone wrong and that this core was going to change the ORAS metagame forever. What is that core? Yard and Cresselia. Your first question might be, where did the idea even come to pair these two Pokemon together, especially where their roles are complete opposites? The idea came to mind while randomly building teams and coming across the Moonlight mechanic in Weather. Moonlight normally restores 50% of a Pokemon's HP, reduced to 25% under Rain and Sandstorm. Despite having Moon in its name though, Sun actually raises the amount of HP gained by Moonlight to 75%. This gives your Cresselia even more longevity than it already has, with its great HP and defensive stats allowing it to shine as one of the best defensive Pokemon in the generation. Its ability to wall key threats in ORAS like Mega Charizard and Mega Lopunny gives it a key role to perform in the metagame and can even be a Calm Mind win condition under the right circumstances. That is where Mega Charizard Y comes into play, being able to set up the Sun with its Drought ability while also being an extremely powerful special attacker with its 159 base special attack. Sun boosted Flamethrower is an extremely difficult move to switch into for Mega Charizard Y, especially with Solar Beam as added coverage, making Water and Rock types that would normally want to switch in think twice about their decision. Being 4 times weak to Stealth Rocks is the main reason that this Pokemon is not as dominant in the metagame as it might appear like it should be, as entry hazard stacking is a very common play pattern in the ORAS metagame. So how are we going to enable this innovation? Let's take a look at the team of 8 Pokemon that we drafted for this tournament, looking to get the best out of our Mega Charizard Y and Cresselia. We ended up getting the first pick in the draft, which while usually a good thing, does mean that we have a bit of an awkward position in later rounds when looking to get our Mega Charizard Y and Cresselia core. Mega Pokemon like Gardevoir would oftentimes be a great first overall pick, but we would need to save our Mega Pokemon slot for the Charizard. Therefore, we went with the best non-Mega Pokemon option on the board, Landorus Therian. One of the most ever-present threats in this era of Pokemon, its utility as a blanket defensive check with Intimidate makes it a great tool in combination with our future pick of Cresselia. It is a reliable Stealth Rock setter as well, crucial for enabling the damage that our Charizard pick will do, as well as being a setup win condition with Rock Polish and Sword Stance when the situation calls for it. Due to its popularity on cores like Sand Offense, we have to reach for Mega Charizard Y here in round 2 to guarantee getting it on our team. While the main crux of this idea is to enable Cresselia defensively in Sun, this Pokemon itself is one of the most difficult Pokemon to switch into in the ORAS metagame. Bulky Water and Rock types will have to contend with getting hit by Solar Beam, a move that can often kill after even just one switch into Sun Boosted Flamethrower. The biggest weakness for this Pokemon, however, is Stealth Rock, as we are required to take 50% of our HP every time we want to switch this in. This makes a Pokemon that can reliably use Rapid Spin or Defog our next top priority, which we immediately solve with our next pick on the wheel, picking up Latios. In round 3, this is great value for a Pokemon that can reliably set up profitable Defog turns with its ability to threaten powerful Draco Meteors. Due to the lack of good options for Rapid Spin and Defog in this metagame, it is unlikely we are going to be able to get a second option in this regard, meaning that we are going to oftentimes be pigeonholed into using our Latios as a Defog plus 3 attacks role. This means our final team will have multiple Psychic types as well, meaning that we're going to be a little bit weaker to Dark-type Pokemon, something we will have to be mindful of as we continue to draft. This is where the team really begins though, finally drafting Cresselia, Draft League's very own Bill Russell. Putting up dominating defensive performances in its era, it's back in the new age of draft where people actually have a good grasp on how to draft and build their teams. While the days of sweeping people with Calm Mind Cresselia are probably gone, this Pokemon is still a great counter to a lot of the ORAS's most powerful threats, including Garchomp, Mega Charizard, and Mega Lopunny. The Sun aspect allows you to switch into these Pokemon longer into the game, enabling for you to play safer with the Mega Charizard Y, not relying on aggressive predictions to win the game, allowing the inevitability of the team to take over. Our next pick alongside the Cresselia is Klefki, a Pokemon that provides some key utility offensively and defensively on this team. With Landorus T already operating as our Stealth Rock user, we get some diversity in hazards with Klefki's spikes, giving us a hazard stacking component of our own on this team. Defensively, a Fairy type also gives us a consistent Dark Resist to help deter and manage knockoff and Dark attack spam against teams that can use that to counter our Latios and Cresselia. Bulky fighting types are great in ORAS, and we pick up one of the better ones in Hariyama. I often used Throw in this slot, but the points worked out to where I could get a more powerful option at this stage. Iron Hands has quickly become a fan favorite in Generation 9, and for good reason. While this Pokemon is certainly worse than the Mighty Iron Hands, a bulky fighting type with the ability to consistently switch into powerful attackers with its high HP stat and threaten powerful close combats will always be a useful addition to any team. We get Lantern with our second to last pick, giving us access to a bulky water, a crucial role to fill on draft teams as a way to consistently switch into a move like Scald. It can also be an electric immunity, preventing fast Volt Switch users from being able to get momentum on our team. At this point in the draft, Greninja was a difficult Pokemon for us to manage, one of the best Pokemon in all of ORAS Draft League. This pick helps with that gap, giving us the ability to switch into it regularly and maintain momentum with Volt Switch. Finally, for 3 points, we get access to a Sunsweeper and Vileplume to round out our team. Grass and Poison stab coverage gives us a cheap option to complement our Landorus T and Mega Charizard X, primarily designed to punish defensive water types that may want to be used to check these Pokemon. The format of this tournament is simple. We play 3 pool games, and anyone who goes 2-1 or 3-0 will advance to the next stage. This will lead to a situation where there will be a lot of buys for the first round of brackets, so going 3-0 can be crucial to helping us skip straight to the next round of brackets. We are into the battle portion of the video, and we are starting our first pools game against Snipey Noob. This is the team you see on screen that he has. He left Porygon Z and Empoleon on the bench. Logically makes sense. I think, Empoleon had some interesting applications, but gave a lot of free turns to my team on stuff like Cresselia and Hariyama. And Porygon Z just not really faster than my threats of Charizard or Latios, kind of forced to be Scarf, which not necessarily the best, and I could have Guts Hariyama, which could be a really good switch into something like the Dry Attack. So let's get into the team that I brought. I have Hidden Power Ice Landorus here specifically to counter their Landorus, with the Rocky Helmet as well to punish U-turns. I have Trick, Choice Scarf, Latios, and the reason I have Trick Latios here is that's a really good way to punish stuff like the Sylveon and the Rotom Wash. Choice Scarf Fairy move is kind of good against this team. It's good against the Hariyama. It's good against Latios, but it gets walled really effectively by the Cresselia and the Klefki. I just have Spike's Klefki, pretty standard. Pretty standard Charizard Mega Y as well. Nothing really to see there. Standard Cresselia. Colbur Berry there for the Zoroark. Just a way to kind of figure out where that Zoroark is. That's going to be a difficult thing about this matchup. It's just kind of understanding where Zoroark is. That's something I struggle with, as a player, is playing around Zoroark. So being kind of cognizant of that, and then fake out Hariyama, the regular hands, as you'll hear me call it out in this video. Fake out's just nice here to break disguises on the Zoroark as well. And then we have 92 speed and Heavy Slam to actually have this be a way to kill the Sylveon, which you'll see as we get into this battle. So let's get right into it. So we're going to have a double Lando lead. Actually not. He's going to lead his Lando, and I'm going to lead with my Iron. I keep thinking about Iron Hands. I've used so much Iron Hands recently that I'm using Hariyama actually in this league. And the reason I let Hariyama is, one, allows me to fake out any potential Zoroark lead. So if I see something that could be Zoroark that I have a bad matchup against, something like the Sylveon, it could be the Mega Gallade, I want to get a fake out here. I know this is not the Zoroark though because of the Intimidate, so I'm able to just go right into my own Landorus here just to prevent this from doing anything super crazy. He gets his rocks up as he goes into Rotom Wash. That U-turn then reveals that this is also not going to be the Zoroark, so good news there. We know this Landorus and this Rotom now have been, well, we don't have any damage on the Landorus yet, so we can't differentiate between a Landorus Zoroark yet, but we can between a Rotom Wash Zoroark. So right here we go into the Latios. Sylveon is going to be pretty consistently the switch into this thing. At this point I'm just going to go Klefki. The nice thing about Sylveon being disguised is that Klefki should be able to answer both of those Pokemon. So quick free defog, and now we know that his game plan is to use the Sylveon as his initial switch into Latios, which means we can get a really aggressive with the size shock on those Pokemon. Right here, we're just going to go back into our Landorus, assuming that this is the regular Landorus because of the fact that it came in on Klefki. That is confirmed. We get the U-turn off and we get a little bit of chip, and so we get chip on the Landorus to kind of disguise that from the Zoroark. So huge there. We get a big U-turn off here on the Rapidash. So once again, we're kind of chipping everything here a little bit, which is super important when playing against the Zoroark style teams. And if you're someone, who like me in the past has struggled with Zoroark, getting this early chip just really helps, distinguish that and lower the effectiveness of that Pokemon. So bringing our Latios, and because we know that Sylveon is the initial answer, I'm just going to go right for the Side Shock. It's going to do about 41%. So at this point, to a KO from here, but certainly don't want to risk the Hyper Voice, and he could, as you see here, just have the Wish. So we're going to get up a Spike. Spike is going to be super good here as he just gets all of his health back on the Rotom. Now we're going to go here aggressively into the Rotom Wash. Now the reason I did this is kind of twofold. One, the way that he played it previously is I kind of actually expected this to be Choice Scarf because of how much damage this took. This took so much damage, or why did I remember this is what happens when you play these games so far in the past, is you kind of expect these things to be Choice Scarf when they're not. But he goes right here. It's because of the damage. Yeah, the damage was Choice Scarf, or was offensive damage. So I kind of expected this to actually be Choice Scarf. Yeah, turns out it's not, and he just drops a fat Shadow Ball on me. So if he ever gets up Stealth Rocks the rest of this game, this Pokemon is actually going to not be able to come in again, which is super problematic. This Pokemon is really good here to put pressure on stuff like the Rapidash, and we see here the Side Shot comes out, and he reveals here to be Zoroark disguised as the Gallade. So we do have the Spike Up, which allows us to now differentiate these two. We do have a Dodge there, a Stealth, or a Pursuit, so we are able to keep that as a sack for the late game. But if he ever gets his Lando in for free, he's always just going to set up the rocks to prevent Latios from coming back in. But because we know this Zoroark, we can go straight into our Iron Hands, or our Hariyama, my apologies. And this is where that kind of prep comes into play here. 92 speed, Heavy Slam is in range here for the Sylveon, and we're going to be able to just click Heavy Slam. Our opponent just caught completely off guard by that preparation, and they're just in a real bad spot now, losing that Sylveon. Now Sylveon was their answer to Latios, so as I said, getting up Stealth Rocks is just going to be the way that they're going to be able to play around that set. So not really the end of the world for them to lose that, but certainly good to see some of our prep come into play and get an early kill, and for something like Rotom Wash, which is at 50% already, to start being leveraged in more situations. So now we get to bring in Cresselia. Cresselia is one of the better answers to Mega Gallade in this metagame, and part of the reason we have Colbur is to kind of eat that initial knockoff as an item. And you see here he's just going to go into Mega Gallade and set up the Sword Stance, and he sets up another Sword Stance, getting really greedy. And this second Sword Stance really doesn't matter too much at the end of the day, because we do have the Colbur Berry. We're able to get a T-Wave off, which is huge. That allows something like the Charizard Mega Y to actually check this now in the future. But this T-Wave, very massive. We're able to go into Klefki here. I want to go into Klefki just to eat the knockoff, and now because I'm faster, I'm going to be able to get a powerful Foul Play off, and they're going to kind of see the writing on the wall with that and switch right out. I could have predicted that and maybe got up a second Spike, but second Spike is super irrelevant mainly. I would recommend, if you want to learn about spikes, there's a BKC video that talks about spikes. It talks about 1, 2, and 3 layers of spikes. I'll try to remember to put that in the description. Very much worth watching for kind of the theory of spikes. But Foul Play is super free there, and I get a bunch of damage on Lando as well, which is super relevant, especially where I have Rocky Helmet and can punish U-turns, and he hasn't clicked HP Ice yet, which, given his set of Stealth Rock or Earthquake U-turn, I actually think the last move is probably knockoff. And you can see here the U-turn, because at that situation, you would expect an HP Ice to try to get value on my Landers, because Landers here, for me, still has a decent amount of value, at least against the Rapidash, that I can use it for. So he's going to go right into the Rotom Wash as I go for the U-turn, and as I said, my U-turns are super free. I could have HP Ice there, but it's so low already, and we know that this is defensive, that we're just going to be able to check it with something like the Charizard later on in the game. And this is kind of one of the things to note about Charizard Y, and why hazard removal is so important, as we can now only use this Pokemon twice the rest of the game, because our Latios is at 8%. We're not going to be able to get these rocks off, and this is a pretty good opportunity to get to use it, because with the Spike Up, there's really not much that can switch in. I mean, he could have Flash Fire Rapidash, but I could just go for any sort of mid-ground that kills Rotom at 15%. It's really hard to bring that Pokemon in. And especially with the Sun coming up, they're actually going to be able to go in to leverage that with the Rapidash this turn. So we're going to be able to get that Rotom, and now my opponent's defensive kind of backbone is just really falling apart. And we're going to be able to leverage our Landorus, Hariyama, and Cresselia to really lock down their offenses the rest of the game. You can see here Sun Boosted Flare Blitz absolutely deletes my Landorus. Super unfortunate there. They just completely lose Landorus like that. We're going to be able to go into Cresselia though. What's nice about Cresselia is we can kind of start to see a little bit of the Sun aspect of this team come up. Is we can bring this in, take a Sun Boosted Flare Blitz, and be able to to moonlight that off all the way back to full if need be. But we go for the T-Wave there. T-Wave 1 slows down the Rapidash if they stay in Flare Blitz, and we can get the moonlight off after, or catches any switches to something like Zoroark trying to get aggressive. And because my opponent goes to the Zoroark, we can get aggressive and stay in because of the Colbur Berry. We don't really have a move to hit that with, so we're going to get our Colbur Berry actually procced on the Pursuit on the way out. So really surprised it didn't Pursuit Trap the Latios earlier in the game. Maybe just not expecting Choice Scarf and wanting to protect against Draco Meteor is probably what they were doing there. But Hariyama is able to come in, and because I'm in on the Zoroark, I have such a free Ice Punch on this turn. Ice Punch obviously does a million to the Zoroark. Rapidash is really difficult to switch into any fighting move. And Gallade, could come in, but I think they want to preserve HP on that with the fact that it's paralyzed. So Ice Beam super free there. And with, we see the Yachi Berry on Landorus. So Yachi Berry there probably, maybe to get, probably HPS Lati, I guess is what you're going for in that scenario. And they're able to bring their Mega Gallade in, but we do have the all-powerful Cresselia able to lock it down. So we know it's Earthquake, Swords Dance. I'm going to go right back here into Iron. I keep calling it Iron. Hariyama. I expected a double, honestly. Or switch into Zoroark here on the Cresselia, but, they decided to, I guess, stay in and just try to force their way through this Cresselia. These paras are kind of frustrating, but without the Swords Dance boost, it's really not doing any damage. And I'm able to just get all the way back to full health. As you can see, Ice Punch here at +2 is doing 34%. Like, that's doing no damage. I know I'm safe from crit, so I'm just going to be able to moonlight my way back up into a good amount of HP here before killing off this Gallade. As you can see, I can basically get back to full HP now. My plan was to have this end up getting to 60%, so that's a little bit frustrating to get paired on that final turn there. But with their SD Earthquake double punch set, that's really not doing anything at all to this Cresselia. And Cresselia is honestly going to be able to bag up the rest of this game, honestly, on its own. Rapidash is going to come out here, or not the Rapidash, the Zoroark is going to come out here. And with the Dark Pulse, you can see the power of Cresselia is going to take 54%. That is nothing. And we were able to kill the Zoroark. Really glad that we were able to get the chip on that earlier. And Cresselia lives the Flare Blitz, and the Rapidash goes down. So a big first win in the Oras Cup. Let's get on to the next battle. On to game 2 of pools. As I said earlier, any win from here on out is going to guarantee me into the bracket stage. As 2 wins guarantees you to move on. Our opponent's team is on screen. They have benched Rotom and Girder. Both Pokemon that make a lot of sense here. Girder really struggles to make any progress against Cresselia, and Rotom is really taken advantage of by stuff like the Latios, the Cresselia as well. Not really the Lantern. The Klefki can kind of wall it down as well. And even Vileplume to a certain extent, which Vileplume is on the team in this game. Let's get into the team that I brought. I have Choice Scarf Landorus. Choice Scarf Landorus is really, really nice here to have a check to the Greninja. Good way to check their own Zard that they have here. This is the Zard Y, right? Their own Zard Y, really crucial there. And then just nice for Nidoqueen as well, though, you're usually going to outspeed it with most offensive sets anyway. E-Belt Latios is really, really powerful here. Draco plus Psyshock coverage is super powerful. I would have liked to have had HP Fire on this, but I really couldn't fit it on this set while also having with Roost and Defog. I wanted that little bit of longevity to come in on Pokemon like the Rotom and the Girder if I had to. Assault Vest Hariyama just very, very powerful in this matchup as a way to come in on Greninja consistently. Flame Charge Zard Y was really, really powerful here. I have Rock Slide for their Zard Y on this set, but Zard Y just kind of ran through this team at +1 speed. So super good matchup for this Pokemon. Really hoping to leverage that. We have another Colbur Berry Cresselia, and that's for the Greninja as well. Greninja is a really typical Pokemon for this team to manage, so want a way to live, any choice specs hit, get a T-Wave off, and manage it from there. And then honestly, Vileplume is a really good matchup here with its dual stab, HP Fire on this for the Scizor and the Ferroseed, and just completely runs through my opponent's team. So a little bit, a pretty offensive team, honestly, with Choice Scarf Landorus, the Expert Belt Latios. I keep read Zapdos because that's the nickname on this. And then the Vileplume. So let's get right into the game. So my opponent leads up with Greninja, and I lead up with Choice Scarf Landorus. So I'm like, you know what? You're not going to be Choice Scarf. Oh, jokes, turns out you are. But, all right. My opponent has revealed Protean Greninja, which is actually banned in ORAS Draft League. So, well, we win this one. So, on to Game 3. All right, we're in Game 3 now, and we are 2-0, which means we are guaranteed to make it to brackets. But because of the way they're doing it, where everyone with 2 wins makes it to the bracket stage, there's going to be a lot of buys in round 1 to account the number of people who are going to make the brackets. So going 3-0 actually gives us a good chance to have a buy in the first round of brackets, which would be super huge. Just makes the tournament just that little bit easier. So this is my opponent's team. We're playing against Ace 98121212. Someone actually, a lot of people, someone who like most of the goons have actually played like in the last couple of weeks, surprisingly enough, in a lot of the tours going on in Smogon this summer. They've elected to leave from their bench, leave on the bench Rotom Heat, which is a little surprising. I actually think Rotom Heat had a decent matchup here. Spans Willow decently well on something like Charizard or against Lando. I guess Willow's hard to spam with Hariyama in the back, but it's a good way to switch into a lot of what I have coming on Klefki, coming on Lando, coming on Zard Y, maybe even coming on Hariyama. I think there was a lot of merit to that Pokemon in this matchup, but Shuckle, just has no merit almost ever. So understandable that Pokemon is on the bench. But yeah, Rotom Heat was one I was kind of expecting a little bit. We're bringing another Choice Scarf Lando this week. This is also going to be our rocker, so going to be concealed a little bit on that. But Scarf knockoff here, just super powerful against their own Lottie. And the reason we're doing that is because we have Colbur Lottie here, then a way to live a hit from the Crocodile. But we are running HP Fire for Mega Scizor, which means because of how ORAS works, the way ORAS works with hidden powers, it actually changes your IVs. We have nothing that they need HP Fire for on their Latios, so we know we're always going to be slower than their Latios, which means we need another answer instead of just like preying on a speed tie, which we were going to need anyway, but we're going to need a consistent way to do that, and that'll be Choice Scarf Landorus in this matchup. Iron Hands is pretty similar. I'm just going to keep calling it Iron Hands because it's the ORAS Iron Hands. Pretty standard set, just kind of bulky, come in on a variety of his Pokemon on a Scizor, do a lot of damage to Scizor and stuff. This is kind of just a generically physical attacker. We have another Flame Charge Charizard Y this week. We have Ancient Power for the Rotom Heat. Just as a way, if we chip that and get it low, maybe we can get a couple boosts and just auto win the game. But Flame Charge just as a way to also protect against Choice Scarfers and have a way to prevent Lottie from coming in for free after the fact. Safety Goggles, Cresselia is our default Breloom answer, so we don't have to worry about Sleep Sacks in this matchup, while putting our Vileplume at risk. Expert Belt Vileplume actually does super well in this matchup. It did super well in the previous matchup. Unfortunately, my opponent brought a set that was illegal, so we didn't actually get to see it put in any work, but hopefully in this matchup we'll get to see that. And let's get actually just right into that battle. So my opponent leads with the Crocodile. I'd lead with the Iron Hands, the Hariyama, and Hariyama just has no switch-ins at this point. I go right for the knockoff here. I figured that knockoff is obviously one of the best mid-ground clicks in the game at this point, and I wasn't really predicting Latios in specific. I kind of figured maybe Tentacruel might come in, maybe Mega Scizor. But Lottie comes in, which is super huge for me, and I'm just going to be able to go into my Cresselia here, take this Draco Meteor, and now my opponent's just in a really, really bad spot. They actually decide to keep this, which is surprising. I didn't really have a way to hit that. I could have thrown up a Toxic, but Ice Beam could have put them under pressure. I guess it kind of makes sense for them to stay, and I just want to go into this to start to get aggressive and put pressure on something like the Crocodile that might be trying to Pursuit Trap my Cresselia in this matchup. I don't have the Colbur Berry this week, or in this battle, which makes things a little bit more difficult, but unfortunately my opponent just roosts there, and risks their Lottie getting paralyzed. One thing I do here, which maybe conceals a little bit of information about my hidden power, is I go right into Lottie here. Now, Lottie is at -2, so obviously you're going to have to switch out. But this being aggressive here does give me a free Draco Meteor turn here. Now, obviously, Klefki is right there, and I kind of know that, but I'm still going to go for it anyway and see if they give me the opportunity, especially where Choice Scarf Lando is such a free Pokemon to bring in this scenario. And I'm going to use it to get on my Stealth Rocks. Now, if I hard out here, it might make it a little obvious that I'm Choice Scarf. But Stealth Rocks are going to be nice here to put pressure on the Scizor, trying to come in multiple times. Pressure the Lottie, as we know, and that's going to want to come in frequently. It does have the Roost, unfortunately. But Stealth Rocks are just generally decent against this team, specifically the Scizor Calyx. We want to prioritize putting that in range of HP Fire as quickly as possible. We just go into Cresselia here, and this is just a really unfortunate turn. My opponent does not have Pursuit, though, which is actually huge. They're just going to get up their own Stealth Rocks. As I go for the U-turn, they're, really, they got those screens up, used a great opportunity to get screens up, but they're not really taking advantage of it. They're just getting up the Stealth Rocks. I'm going to be able to go into my Hariyama here, which is another good way for me to answer this Crocodile. And as the light screen goes down, they're going to go into Scizor. I'm just going to go right back into the Cresselia here, trying to catch them on a switch to something like the Lottie. That's what they went into last time, or maybe the Breloom, trying to protect, play around a fighting move there again. But they're going to go right into Scizor. And unfortunately, a little bit of trouble. Would have liked to obviously maybe have stayed in and clicked a fighting move to put pressure on the Scizor. But they're going to get a U-turn off. I don't have the Rocky Helmet to punish that, and they're going to go right into Klefki. It's really to just get screens back up. I'm going to go for the Earthquake here, because if that's their plan, I'm going to be able to get a 2-hit KO on this through the Reflect, which is massive. And then this is one less Pokemon that I have to worry about in this battle. And I'm going to go right into my Cresselia here. I honestly thought I might have had a chance to live this Draco Meteor, but I clearly didn't. But they choose to Ice Beam, maybe trying to predict me going into something else here. As you can see, I took 43, so I'm kind of surprised that they Ice Beamed here. Kind of a pretty big mistake on their part, but I just go for the Toxic on their attack. I kind of figured they would switch at that point. They just drop a Draco here and claim up my Cresselia. So Cresselia is gone, which means I don't have a Spore Sack for Breloom without getting really aggressive with Vileplume, which is a little bit of a problem actually at this spot. We do get this thing Toxic, which is huge for my endgame, and in comes the Klefki. And I just go for the HP Fire here. I get the crit, which is pretty unfortunate. I don't actually remember what the calc on that was, but it means if it didn't kill, I had to risk a T-Wave, let them get up another screen or something. So super critical turn there at that point. And they're going to go into Latios. They know that they outspeed me now at this point. I can just drop a Draco on my team. I have to go into Iron Hands here to basically sack it to this Draco. Iron Hands has really done its use here. Crocodile is at super low, so we're going to be able to check that with the Landorus and with the Latios. And otherwise, it doesn't really do much else the rest of this game. We are going to be able to get in our Landorus here. Scarf Lando is going to be super good. U-turn is just a really great click at this junction of the game. They can go into Scizor. They get basically put into a bad position with the Charizard then at that point. So they're just going to sack off their Lottie and allow me to kind of, take some initiative back on me here. They go into the Tentacruel here, which actually ended up being Choice Scarf, or just ended up being faster. Maybe I just didn't prep for that correctly. But they're going to knock off, and I am Colbur Berry again. I actually, I thought it was Expert Belt here. I was confused in the last match. I am Colbur Berry for the Pursuit Trap Crocodile. So I do take like nothing from that and just kill that with Psychic. So very offensive Tentacruel. They're bringing Crocodile, and I still outspeed even though I'm modest here. So I'm going to be able to drop a Draco and then kill that Pokemon. They bring in Breloom, which probably wouldn't have been the Pokemon I brought in next. They do about 77%. They just go for the Facade. They do reveal Toxic Orb. So I guess they didn't have anything to hit me. Maybe they don't even have Spore. Reveal Protect, and at this point, the game is just kind of falling away for my opponent. This Latios, now that their Lottie is down, is basically able to just kind of clean up the rest of the game. They're going to go Scizor, probably have the Bullet Punch here to be able to kill me. They actually reveal to not have Bullet Punch, and they just start roosting off all this health, trying to get back to higher HP. But I am doing 50% each time. They just Aerial Ace here as a coverage move for, I guess, the Vileplume, but I'm able to go into my Mega Charizard Y at this point. They do reveal Bullet Punch there, which interesting sequences on the final few turns, but we're going to be able to pick up the win and go 3-0 in pools, and that confirms that we got a bye for the first round of brackets. So we're going to be moving on to the next round of brackets, and that is the next battle up. So with our bye in the first round of the brackets, we are here at the round of 128. I think there's 128 players at this point in the tournament. We are playing against Aku Goblin, and he's got a really, really interesting team. A lot more niche in terms of the Pokemon you're going to see here. Obviously, there's a Lando T. Let's not get too crazy with it. There's still a Lando T here, but he's got Mega Glalie, a really, really interesting Mega Pokemon that you don't see a lot in ORAS. And then he's got some interesting Pokemon that are kind of more standard with the Ferrothorn, Crobat, Snorlax, Keldeo, etc. So Our opponent has left Keldeo and Gardevoir on the bench, which makes a lot of sense here. Keldeo gets just completely shut down by Cresselia. Can't really do anything to progress against that Pokemon. Even Lottie is a good way to kind of thwart Keldeo for the most part. And then Gardevoir is kind of in that similar issue where it struggles with the same Pokemon that the Keldeo does here, mainly the Cresselia. So makes sense to have my opponent left those two on the bench. Let's quickly talk about the team that I have brought in this game. I have a Belly Drum Flame Charge Charizard. This completely just 6-0s my opponent. If I can get a Belly Drum off, kill something with Flame Charge, like whether it be like a Landorus, whether it be a Snorlax, whether it be a Ferrothorn, it's just game over from there. So that is going to be the win count we're playing to in this game. We have Expert Belt Latios, just very, very standard Latios set. We don't have HP Fire for the Ferrothorn, though. We don't really need that. We have a lot of good Ferrothorn checks in this game, and that includes Calm Mind Cresselia. We finally bring Calm Mind Cresselia in this tournament. CM plus HP Fire can put a lot of pressure on that Ferrothorn, as well as my Iron Hands, the regular hands, the Hariyama. Just the Guts Adamant set as a way to kind of deter T-Wave, and then you have Fire Punch to do a lot of damage to that Ferrothorn, as well as Close Combat. More of a generic move in that sense. We have a really, really similar Lando T to the one we ran in the last Lando T matchup we played with HP Ice Rocky Helmet. Just really good job of punishing that Landorus set. And then we have a Vileplume in the Sun to just put massive pressure on our opponent. And this is another HP Fire that we have available to us. But enough of that. Let's get into the battle here. My opponent's going to lead with Primeape. I lead with Lando. Lando's just such a really good lead in this spot, except he actually is Defiant Primeape. Now, that's not going to matter too much because Cresselia is going to be able to wall this Pokemon all day. That does 20% at +1, which is a pitiful amount of damage. And at this point, I kind of figure something like Ferrothorn is going to come in. I start Calm Minding. Let's go. If he's not Leech Seed, then we're going to start cooking because that deals 51%. Reveals the Leech Seed though. So, okay, we're not going to be able to use our Calm Mind Cresselia to completely just break past this Ferrothorn in the early game. But we're able to get a really aggressive play into Hariyama. And the reason to go Hariyama here is Hariyama has a really, really good matchup with Close Combat, Ice Punch, and Fire Punch here. Whirlwind is also nice as a way to deter setup Landorus in this matchup if it wants to be Swords Dance, Rock Polish. Good to have that availability as well where there's no Z moves or anything to really play around. So we can get a double there on either a Stealth Rock or a Thunder Wave, and then we have such a powerful Ice Punch turn here. There's no way you're going to ever risk your Ferrothorn at this spot because my team, I do have the Charizard, but Ferrothorn does a decent amount against the rest of the team, and I can't really switch on my Charizard ever to risk Thunder Wave. But these Ice Punches are super free because kind of the initial switch-ins you expect are Landorus and even Crobat to a certain extent, given that Fighting type coverage is pretty free here in theory. So Ice Punch super powerful. And we get a freeze. I know everyone's got the agenda that I'm getting freezes. All these freezes in Draft League recently. But that is kind of unfortunate for my opponent. I'm just going to be able to go into my Cresselia. My opponent is still frozen. So unfortunately for me, and luckily for my opponent, they're going to be able to thaw here and get the U-turn out and not have to take this Psy Shock. But one thing to note, we want to put this thing into range, just start chipping this Pokemon down as well. One of the things you saw in the JJDL video I uploaded recently was really focus on wearing down my opponent's threats, Snorlax, to enable something like the Charizard to start flame charging with Belly Drum. Really want to make sure we just chip this Pokemon, keep it as low as possible. Also makes it so Psyshock can be a 2-hit KO on this Pokemon at another point in time in the game, or Psyshock into Draco Meteor. My opponent just elects to go to return. I do have Landorus that can come in, but I want to play around a nice move because I aggressively went for it. Want to make sure I cover that possibility, and getting an Iron Hands as much as possible. Even though it is a leftover set, this Pokemon is still going to do 1,000,000 damage, and I'm still Ice Punching every turn. Like, there's no way that you're going to be able to want to stand with Snorlax here and risk a fighting move in this turn. So Ice Punch is super free. You get all 88% of that damage, and we get another freeze with the Hariyama. Like, the agenda posters are going to have a field day with this game too, as they have had with my entire BBR run. But Ice Punch is so free, and Hariyama just forces so many of those turns in this game where my opponent just gets put into unwinnable positions where they're really required to switch out. They can't stay in, and that gives me, the agency to make these Ice Punch plays very aggressively. My opponent does thaw immediately though, so it doesn't actually end up mattering. They just Earthquake to try to force damage on this Hariyama, starting to recognize that this Pokemon is going to be really threatening in the end of this game. Now I kind of figure that they're not going to stay in and eat that HP Ice, and this knockoff should actually kill a decent amount of Landorus sets, so knockoff is actually super powerful here. For that reason, we get a knockoff on the Ferrothorn, which is nice. They could go into something like the Crobat. Getting a knockoff on that Black Sludge will really help with the Cresselia calcs, as you'll see later in the battle. They were revealed to be leftovers, or we knew they were leftovers already anyway. But we're going to still get that free turn into Hariyama here, and Hariyama is going to continue to claim those kills. Like over the CC here, I figured, and as they go Primate, which is an interesting click. Not really sure about that one as like a play. Maybe they were just looking to sack that off or use Ice Punch as an opportunity to get this in for free and kind of recognize that this wasn't going to have a lot of value. But I go for the CC here because it kills a Landorus at this point, considering it's at 24 HP or 24%. They can go into Crobat, but I have free turns into my Calm Mind Cresselia. And now with Ferrothorn at low HP, then we're actually going to be able to break through that with HP Fire. So super happy to just go for close combat in this turn. We pick up a Primate that I wasn't necessarily expecting to pick up at this juncture of the game. My opponent just goes for the Brave Bird here with the Crobat. Just trying to push some damage, honestly, into this game. They go for the U-turn into Snorlax here. I go for another Side Shock, once again, just trying to put as much chip as I can on this Pokemon. They actually revealed to be Pursuit, which that did a pitiful amount of damage. So now my Cresselia is at pretty low HP, so we have to be mindful of that. We would like this to be at higher HP to manage something like the Glalie. Obviously, we have a really good check to that in the Charizard, but we want this also to be, at good HP for the Crobat as well. A lot of reasons to still keep this at high HP, but that Pursuit gives us a free turn into Hariyama. And as I said, this close combat is free because it is going to kill Landorus at this range, given the calc of the Ice Punch. And Hariyama has picked up 2 kills with close combat early on in this game, really showing a lot of value here. Now they are going to be able to bring in this Pokemon here, and I have to go Landorus this time specifically, risk something like a Toxic coming out here, and that's mainly because, Brave Bird into Brave Bird is just going to be able to deal with this Cresselia. So I'm going to have to find a free turn to get that Pokemon in for free to get a Moonlight off with my CM set. I do take this opportunity to get up Rocks though. Rocks are going to be super good here. It forces, a lot of pressure on the Crobat, forces them to take a turn to defog these away to enable the Glalie as well, which is super important. I'm just going to go into Hariyama. I should be able to take any hit, bar the Explosion. And they go for the Toxic. This is a super unfortunate miss for my opponent. Would have, brought down the longevity of this Pokemon just a little bit. But with the Guts, if I got that, then I have such a really free Ice Punch here again. And can really just kill this Crobat off immediately. But I do go for the close combat. I kind of figured maybe they go for it again. Maybe they just try to boom and remove this Hariyama, considering it's been such a problem for them. And at this point, they kind of have to roost anyway. So I get a free turn into my Cresselia here to get the HP off. But I kind of figured maybe, let's play it safe still. We still have Landorus. Landorus kind of is a little bit lower in utility at this point. No Primate and no Landorus, both of those Pokemon gone. We still do want this for the Snorlax, but we can start to use this for the Crobat as well. They're going to have to find a turn to defog. I go into Hariyama here. I kind of figured they might try to make a play into the Ferrothorn and get really aggressive on them and just create a really punishing turn like I have basically this entire game with my Hariyama, but they elect to just stay in and defog away, which makes a lot of sense at this juncture of the game. They go into Mega Glalie really aggressively as I go into Cresselia, and this does give me the opportunity to get a little bit of leftovers. I'm going to live all returns here, and I'm going to get a Moonlight back up over half health, up into 67%. They're going to be able to get a Toxic off, though, as a result, as I just start Calm Minding. And the reason I Calm Mind is that's going to make this HP Fire do even that much more damage. Put pressure on Crobat trying to switch in. Means Ferrothorn can't even switch in now to the HP Fire. And they're just going to go into the Snorlax to eat at this HP Fire. A crit does 4%. That is embarrassing damage from the Cresselia. Certainly not the most offensive mon of all time. Calm Mind Cresselia is a personal favorite of mine. I've used that in so many leagues in the past, but Unfortunately, in this league, it's not going to be the best way to go in modern Pokemon. But I do get a free turn with Hariyama here to click Ice Punch. Now, I've been clicking Close Combat here recently. I feel like some of these turns should have just been Ice Punch, but I kind of, at a certain point, I'm kind of thinking, are they going to finally call me and stay in? In that situation with Snorlax, there's not really a benefit to doing it, so Ice Punch should have been the click there every time. And I am starting to lose a good amount of HP on this Landorus. I do have to be mindful of that. Now, I don't have a lot of uses for this the rest of the game, and I really should have gone for like an Earthquake here on this turn. I go for the knockoff just to be safe, see if they try to just attack me. If I Earthquake that turn, I actually don't have, I completely forgot I don't have Earthquake on this set. That's kind of why I went for the knockoff here. Just remove that Black Sludge, make this game that much easier. The U-turn off, take a little bit of Rocky Helmet, and are below half. So things are still looking good for me. I get my late game rocks up again. Rocks are going to be super useful still with this Crobat at such low HP. Going to force a defog turn, allow me to even get a kill elsewhere here. And now I'm just going to sack this off. At this point with so low HP, I've gotten so much damage off. I've got my rocks up. I think Landorus has done everything it needs to at this point. It's time to bring in Hariyama again. Finally, can I make the right click? I go for the Ice Punch. And I get another freeze. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, I don't know what to say at this point. The agenda for the freezes is going to be crazy. But he finally gets me on one of these plays. I'm like, damn, that's kind of unfortunate. And at this point, I'm just going to go for the Fire Punch. Fire Punch kills, obviously, from this range, and then puts enough pressure on the Crobat to prevent it from really wanting to switch in here. And now my opponents really just run out of almost all of their resources here. I decided to stay in here because I figured they were going to roost. But I just go for the Ice Punch, see if I can catch them trying to Brave Bird and see if I live a hit at this point. But then at this point, I do take the opportunity to get Latios in. Latios is just so good at this spot now. They're going to be able to U-turn off and deal a good amount of damage, but whatever they go into is just going to die at this point. They go into Snorlax, 48 HP. This Side Shock is 2-KOing every single time, and that is Snorlax gone, and they are just basically out of Pokemon at this point. They bring in the Glalie, and I just drop a Draco and kill that Pokemon. So, hey, you mean maybe trying to catch me there, trying to overplay or something, and now they have Crobat against a Charizard, a Latios, and a Cresselia. So, I mean, at this point, they don't really have much that they can really do at this point. I just keep attacking because I'm dealing more with Side Shock than the Roostar, and I try to bring in Cress. I try to get a kill the Cress here. Was this a smart thing to do? Who's to say? Probably not. This is doing 46. So, unfortunately, I just waste a bunch of turns trying to do this to be cute to get a kill. And I'm like, all right, let's smarten up. Let's go into Charizard. That technically could have been a kill with the crit, and that could have got really dicey in this game. But we get the kill and the win, and we're on to the round of 64 in the Oras Cup. We're into the round of 64 now of the Oras Cup, and we are playing against Starmaster, who is an SPL champion, someone who's been trying to get into draft a little bit, and definitely really, really good player. So this is going to be a really, really tough matchup. And if you look at the team on screen, wow, this is my worst matchup yet by far. Garchomp, Greninja, Thundurus, Mega Diancie, Jirachi, all Pokemon that completely just annihilate my team. They left a Swirlix and a Wartortle at home. Are these Pokemon that were ever threatening to come? No. These Pokemon were just never a threat to be in this battle, so we don't have to really worry about them. We're just worrying about the top 6. And wow, this is tough. Mega Diancie is so powerful into my team. I don't really have a way to actually outspeed this. My only way to speed tie it is with the Latios. It's kind of really exposing the speed tiers on this team just a little bit. Thundurus is also really powerful against my team. I have to rely on Cresselia, and I have to rely on Lantern in this matchup as well to kind of manage that. And then Garchomp is just super good too. And as I mentioned before, Greninja is really good against my team. I don't really have a lot of good ways to manage it outside of Hariyama. And then Jirachi is just super difficult to play into as well. I think I ran into this matchup all of the Pokemon I struggle against in draft, to be honest. With my draft, feels like a perfect counter team. But we're going to put our best foot forward here in this battle. Some of the ways that I'm really trying to account for this stuff. So I've got Rocks, Yachi Berry, Landorus to allow me to set up on the Thundurus. And I've got Rock Polish here as a way to get kind of a speed advantage. So if I've chipped down the Garchomp, if it's lead Garchomp and I manage to chip it down, then I can manage that Pokemon with that and kind of get a little bit of an endgame sweep for something like Diancie to take a lot of damage. I have Colbur Berry Latios as a way to kind of lure in that Greninja, that's kind of, I think, going to be one of my best ways to deal with that Pokemon in this matchup. I have Substitute Charizard Y. This is really crucial here. So typically, you would think something like the Diancie would be a really free way to switch into Charizard, especially in the early game, because they can switch in as a really defensive form, protect, get into the Mega, and then get the speed advantage after. But Substitute allows me to really just play around all of that and hit that with a very powerful Solar Beam, and allows me to kind of just come in on stuff like a Moongus, set up a Substitute, force it out, and then get a really powerful attack on any of the switch-ins, something like the Garchomp, for example, with Dragon Pulse or the Mega Diancie. We do have the Cresselia as well. Cresselia is just kind of going to be a standard, especially defensive wall in this matchup. Just trying to match up against a Mega Diancie and the Thundurus, just having switch-ins there in general. Another switch into that Pokemon and the Greninja is going to be this Lantern. Thunderwave, you see a lot of Thunderwaves on this team. I'm really trying to hopefully leverage Thunderwave as a way to deter, to really prevent Mega Diancie, Greninja, and Jirachi from just taking over this game with Volt Switch, Scald, Ice Beam, just standard moves. Ice Beam, in case they want to just set up rocks in my face with the Garchomp, I can take that aggressive stance. And then SD Safety Goggles Hariyama is kind of interesting here because I can switch into this on the Amoonguss, get an SD up, and then basically pick a kill. Unfortunately, you know, this set kind of gets walled and kind of gets prevented, not walled, but gets prevented by Diancie. But if I was able to catch the Diancie early, that's kind of my game plan going into this. I should have a decent shot at this matchup. But as I said, this is an uphill battle. The team is just super good into mine. Now let's get into it. Greninja lead against the Landorus. I learned my mistake last time of playing against, playing against, God, I can't even remember at this point, Kinetic. Just staying in. I probably should have U-turned there. That would have been a really good play, but they reveal T-Spikes, and T-Spikes is just such a death sentence against my team. It's a really interesting bring into my team, because if you look at my team, I have, you know, 4 Pokemon that are immune to T-Spikes, but this Lantern really gets pressured by the T-Spike, despite that. And even though I have Vileplume as a grounded poison, I think my other Pokemon is Klefki, which is immune. I have 2 Pokemon that get touched by this, but they're super relevant to be hit by this T-Spike, and that's just a powerful turn. They're going to go into Garchomp here on the Scald. I really want to get that burn. That burn would have been massive in terms of this game. Kind of them trying to predict that Volt Switch there. But unfortunately, they're going to get up Stealth Rocks, and now this game is just going to become even more difficult as I spam a T-Wave here, get that onto the Amoonguss, but I have to go into my Hariyama to eat that with the Safety Goggles, and they use that as an opportunity to get in Diancie. So my game plan of preventing Diancie from getting Mega and hopefully kind of like tricking it in with Zard, that's not going to happen. I'm going to go to Cresselia here just to try to manage this Pokemon. They just go for the Moonblast, and that's not dealing a lot by any means, but this Pokemon is just going to have such a good time against me. I go for the Moonblast here. I really should have T-Waved here on this turn. T-Wave would have been able to really punish this Jirachi and limit it. I would have had the Amoonguss paralyzed, the Jirachi paralyzed, and the Paraspam would have started to really come through in this game. And now they can just go into this, and they set up Substitute. And wow, there's not much I can do now. This is one thing my team is not really equipped to deal with, is Substitute. Calm Mind Jirachi. You know, I had potentially some options. I could have gone to Landorus there and spammed EQ. I do have the Yachi Berry as like a way to protect against that even a little bit, but once again, you know, this is just a set that's going to be able to put too much pressure on my team. I'm going to have to sack the Hariyama at this point. A Pokemon that would have been nice to have. Now I don't have a Spore Sack or a Spore Immunity into the Amoonguss, which is not great, and they're just going to go for the HP Ice. I'm going to eat that with the Yachi Berry, not well enough though, and I have to break the sub and basically sack this Lando off to break Substitute, which is not good, and this set just completely opened my team up. And at this point, I don't really have much that I can do to actually beat this team. I can go into Latios here, force it out with Shadow Ball. It's going to do a decent amount of damage, like 32% is nothing. And they're going to crit me here, so I'm just like, at this point, I'm like, oh my god. Can I even do anything? Do I just defog? At this point, I'm not killing. I might as well defog and try to get something going with this Charizard, because otherwise I'm just not going to have anything else going my way. I go for the Mega Evolution. I go for the Substitute here, so I figure my only way to actually make headway in this game is to set up a sub. They're just going to get the T-Spike back up as I go for the Solar Beam, so I kill the Greninja. JK, that's got a Focus Sash. They get that T-Spike right back up for Lantern, and we are in danger territory. We killed the Greninja at least, but as I said, this Diancie could come in. They just go into Thundurus instead, forcing me to get Toxic. Then they go for the Wild Charge, interestingly enough. Probably does a little bit better against something like the Cresselia and the knockoff here. Removing the leftover, it's just going to be too much at this point. Ice Beam does about half, which is nice, but just spamming knockoff here. I go for the Volt Switch, get a crit. The crit doesn't really matter because I can go into Cresselia and kill this anyway. As they just elect to go for the knockoff here, take off my leftovers. I go for the Side Shot, get the kill. We're picking up some Pokemon here, but the problem is we're running out of ways to actually win this battle against the Diancie because we're toxic on kind of both Pokemon here that really matter. I go into Lantern here, and at this point that's not really going to help, and Diancie's just going to be able to basically clean out the rest of the game. I was really worried that they were going to get the boost there, which would have been really funny. They go for the Ancient Power, just kill me. Oh, and they Omni Boost here. Not that it mattered too much, but really funny that that happened in a tough matchup, just not able to convert that against my opponent. And that is the end of Yard Crest. The Yard Crest movie is done. That's not the end of Yard Crest on this channel, hopefully in the future. I don't have anything else planned with Yard Crest now, but this is a really, really fun idea that I really wanted to have the opportunity to try in a league. I think the team was interesting. There's a lot of things I think I could have improved on with this team composition. Let me know in the comments down below how you would have done this ORAS draft differently, what you would have done. I think this matchup that I had here was just unfortunately insurmountable, and that's, I think, you know, unfortunately something that you can't really have in ORAS. Like the metagame should be consistent enough that this doesn't happen. So maybe some holes in my Yard Crest idea for now. That is to say though, in Hoenn Classic, one of the kind of the bigger, I wouldn't say bigger in terms of like popular that you see on YouTube or anything, but with a lot of really, really strong Smogon and draft players, Zern actually, you know, good friend of mine, won that league, and his ORAS team had Yard Crest on it. So hey, we're starting a revolution. This team is taking over. So that is all I have for today. Thank you everyone for watching. If you enjoyed, as always, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. I will see you guys in the next Draft League video. And as always, have a wonderful day.